Happy Wealth Wednesday, Mec. I'm so excited to have you here. From a NFT NYC party in the corner of the room, I instantly knew that you were someone really special. So I would love to just kick it off and ask you, where in the world are you calling from today? And what are you working on these days?
Calling from Brooklyn, New York. I want to say the priority at the moment is non-dilutive capital. Wanting to just start building a DAO, having many people who want to help, who I don't believe should be working for free.
So our first question that I always start with is, not to interrupt you, but then I can't wait to dive in. Do you remember what your first ever investment was? Like whether it was in the traditional world or the crypto space? Who told you about it? What got you started?
I had a stock market game in school, but I was maybe 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there. And we did it consistently. And it was sort of just like making bets on things and then trying to like mark the gains or losses and say like which team won, but we didn't actually have any dollars invested. So it didn't stick to me at all. But like formal investment, it would be Bitcoin, which I was trying to make a purchase of something and they only accepted Bitcoin. So I ended up with 2 Bitcoin at $75 each. Like I didn't know what to do with them. I was just like, whatever, there's $75, $150. 2 years later, I started hearing all this Bitcoin in the news. And I was like, don't I have some Bitcoin? So I looked through old emails. I find them and they're $600 each now. And so I quickly sold them. But in a less traditional sense, I think my first investment was in myself. I bought candy to sell at school. That was like it was like my version of a lemonade stand, right? Because I grew up in the city and I went to a really big school. I was in one of the specialized high schools, so I had to test into it, but there were 4,800 students in my high school. Seeing the money that I would make selling candy for like the sports team, and then thinking like, well, that only happens a certain amount of time a year. What about the rest of the year? And so my mom, when she went to Costco, I was like, hey, can you buy me like a box of Kit Kats and a box of Snickers? And I gave her the money to buy the candy, and I became a candy mogul.
How and why did you get into this space? Like now the space of Web3, talking about DAOs, building these personas, being part of these communities. What got you into that space?
It's partly the lack of understanding I had about crypto, because I eventually did understand it to the point where I was able to make some money in it. Seeing the term crypto art, my background's in design and art. I understand crypto a little bit now. And what's that intersection? What does that mean? And so when I started to really dig into what it was, for me, it was a smart contract. And I remember hearing a conversation around Kerry James Marshall's retrospective. So he's like this prolific Black painter who at that time, was being honored in this retrospective collection. But he decided to make that conversation about some kind of drama that was happening with the library in Chicago. And they basically had sold some work without his permission that was legally not meant to be sold. It was a mural that he had painted 25 years ago. And the library wanted to do renovations. They put it on the auction block, never called them. And that was the conversation. And it was like, what does it look like for an artist who's committed so much to the world culturally to almost not be able to ever retire, because once you stop making work, you're never paid on the sales of your work, despite the fact that it's millions and millions of dollars being sold. And so when I discovered the smart contract as a way to like legitimize that this person owned the work or they're the creator of the work and that there should be a royalty attached to it, I was just like, I don't think like this is fail safe, but this is way better than what we have.
I'd love if you could share a bit more about MecX and the role that you're playing in the wealth space. Why is it important?
There are so many layers of friction that I was experiencing when I first came into the space. And I think, it's probably because I was so early in the space. That was December 2020. I think people who are being onboarded today have a much easier time. There are more sort of like user-friendly tools. You can actually Google things now. At the time that I came in, there was like no documentation. No one was really writing articles or sharing much. If you don't understand crypto, you're gonna have a difficulty. If you don't understand just like technology and like the technical parts of like building, engineering, web development, that kind of stuff, you're gonna have difficulty. If you don't know how to socialize, right? If you don't have like networks of people that can bring you in and give you access to things, you're gonna have a difficulty. If you don't have disposable income, then you actually can't participate, right? And so seeing all this friction for me was like a call to action. It was like, okay, how do I do the work that I can to alleviate that? And part of it is like, one, being visible, being an example, right? So sort of like, how do you become the authority on the thing that you haven't done? It's like, well, I got to do it first, right? So I started to sell some work, started to really understand like what it looks like to come into the space and do these things so that I could then illuminate to people what I had to learn in order to effectively do that. So whether it was I needed to understand how some of these tools work. I needed to know where to get a smart contract written. I need to know, how to build a community, right? So if they have these difficulties, it's like, how do I distill some of what I've learned to expedite that journey? The idea that I could get somebody who would otherwise spend 4 months spending only 4 weeks, to maybe get to a point where they could execute a project was kind of the goal.
What is exciting you most right now? What do you think is on the bleeding edge? You're in the 2020 NFT early stage. What do you think now is really exciting you?
What excites me most is seeing people get it. One of the things that I say all the time to people is like, NFTs is when PTA moms learn how to spin up a DAO instead of doing a bake sale, right? Like that's how I think about it, because it is that like homegrown, impact-driven, mission-focused effort, the thing that you really care about, just like amplified in so many ways through technology and commerce, right? So once someone who's making this, concerted effort over a 2-week period, and you're rallying all these people together, you're still only appealing to your local school, right? Like the parents that come to that school. So you're limited to how much money you're going to raise. So maybe you do make $2,000 in bake sale money and take your kids on a class trip. But what does it look like to have had those kids draw muffins and you bake nothing at all and sell those drawings to a global market, right? The idea that you get to like 10x, maybe even 100x that same effort, if you understand what it looks like to build a community around these kinds of ideas and use this technology to leverage a larger group of people to commit to that cause.
I'd love to hear if there's a person or a company in this space right now that's really inspiring you.
I'm always going to default to Betty from Dead Fellows. She's the co-founder. She's a creative producer. Her husband's the artist for the project. And they were running an agency before this space. And they've executed one of the most inclusive looking projects that I've seen. It was the first NFT project where it was all like the characters that actually felt like I wanted to buy. And when I saw that project, I had just come back into the space. I had started getting in conversations around building technology, and that's not my wheelhouse. And I was just like, wait, time out. And then when I came back into the space, it was August and they had just launched. So I kind of missed the mint. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? And I was like, totally blown, because I couldn't even understand why I liked it so much. Like, it was just like, they're so cute. And it's just like, oh my God, some of them having like leather jackets with spikes. And, just like this, it was speaking to me. That project got me out of my Web 2 head because someone actually gifted me one. He was the community manager of another project, and he, was kind of friendly. And he was like, I got a bunch. He was like, I got 16 of them. Here's my wallet. Pick one, see if there's one on the floor that you want. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know this guy. Like we spent a little bit of time in spaces. I was like, there's no way I'm going to take thousands of dollars from a stranger. So I said, no, don't worry about it. And then they were having this like metaverse party for Halloween. And I was like, dang, I want to go. And he was like, are you sure you don't want the NFT? And I was like, you know what, maybe I do. So I picked one and he sent it to me when he got home. And then I got to like experience what the utility of having one is. And I was like, that's what you're buying. You're not buying the image, right? You're buying access to the community. The way that they built this project isn't just about buying something that you can sell. It's being a part of this group of people. And the artwork was so thoughtful. I'm staring at it just as a designer, like impressed. And then when I get in the community, there's so many of the people who saw what I saw. So now I'm in a community of people who appreciate art. They eliminated so many of the layers of friction that people would see so that they could feel included. And to me, I was like, they nailed it, right? And so, and that community and the things that Betty advocates for, like it's all very aligned with the way that I feel about the space and what we all should be doing. But there's other, groups of people. I'm a multi-sig signer on a project called Expansion Punks, and that story is there was a guy that worked at Microsoft, and he was on the computer with his daughters, and they were looking at CryptoPunks. And one of his daughters points out that none of the female characters were smiling. And he started to examine the collection after this, and he was like, wow, like they just didn't include it. He did his best effort to match the artwork and then expand it to have those things. And so now there are like non-binary characters, there are like women who were smiling. I happened to get gifted one that is a woman with a hoodie and a gold chain. And I was like, perfect, because again, I'm always looking for me. And I'm like, that's what I wanted. The idea is that we create these communities where people who want to be seen can be seen in the way that they want to be seen.
What advice would you give then to somebody getting started? Obviously, you have dedicated so much time to this question.
Yeah, my favorite advice to give people who specifically want to create in the space is bring a problem to the space. I think the space is so people centric. It's really well suited interpersonal community efforts. People ask me about like, how do you build community? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a formula. I'm not trained in this, but I speak passionately about the things that I care about, and people find me because I'm bringing a problem to the table. The problem that I happen to want to solve is something that is a shared pain point amongst a lot of the people in my community. So when they hear me talking, they'll be like, oh my God, how do I help? You know, I've got 350 people on a list since like the last 5 or 6 months that want to help. And I just started like trying to take tabs of it because I'm like, I have a lot of people who want to help. Let's just make a way for them to at least signal like, here's what I want to be doing and this is what I'm good at. Community building is really about advocating for the thing that you care about. The idea that you just speak passionately about the thing that you care about most and ask the people who are listening to say like, hey, if you know somebody, send them my way. What are the things you care about? And how do you advocate for those in a public way so that people find you?
When you think about scale and scaling community and impact, how have you thought about the storytelling, the evangelism? Like how do you create the ability for others to take and transmit that same message?
In Clubhouse, I was there for 4 months. I had 30,000 people follow me in 4 months. And I'm not from being popular on the internet. Like I had maybe 2,500 people following me on Instagram. And that was really the only platform I used. So I get to this space and I realize just in talking about what I care about, sharing some of the information I was learning, I have all these people who are like agreeing, like, yeah, follow so that they can hear more. And I started to start spaces with the title, like, what do you all want from me? because it just did not make sense. I was just like, what am I supposed to do with you all? Because I come from a different world and a different approach. And my thought was like, I started to feel like there was a missed opportunity. I started to feel like an obligation to tap into this synergy of all these well-meaning people. I'm like, who has 30,000 well-meaning people following them around who aren't doing a thing together? And I think that's how I started to slide down the like, I need to build a tool that we can all get in, you know, and I was just like, wait, this is not what I came here to do. Scaling became the problem because it was like, I don't want people to have to wait for me to wake up to learn something. And I don't want to be beholden to the idea that the only way that I can do this is in you know, I was doing 16-hour spaces, you know what I mean? I was just like living in it and I was fine with it because the way that my brain is wired, when it's on. So I never really complained about it and I didn't have issues. I'm really mindful of my own wants in life. Like I think I've gotten to the point where I know where I'm overextending and I'm like, this isn't about me anymore. And I you know, call it, it's not just about me talking to people, it's about people talking to each other. I think that's the thing that most people miss is that if you can create an opportunity for the community to learn from itself, to help itself, and then also provide that layer of I'm available here, and I'm doing that in video format. I'm not doing it always showing up. I'm getting it out of my head and I'm doing it as thoroughly as possible, like a masterclass that you all have access to, but now you also have access to each other.
How can we keep in touch with you personally in your journey as you're developing what you are as a creator and in the projects that you have coming in the future?
I think the easiest way is Twitter right now. Twitter is the easiest way because I spend most of my time there, but then I have a link tree that goes to everything else. So if you're on another platform, you know, you've got me on socials. And then I think, you know, in the future, like there will be some kind of public good because I started getting away from that, but I realized like there's still a need there. I don't love Discord. I don't feel like it's the safest environment for new people. And it takes a lot of like security education and it's just tricky. And so I haven't really been pushing people in that direction. But yeah, I think that like, you know, that's the easiest platform. And then as we continue to build in the space, we'll have some new solutions.
I can't wait to be following along. I definitely will be. And I so appreciate you as a role model in the space, a speaker, a creator, and an artist. And so we'll definitely be keeping in touch. Thanks so much for being here today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.